Do Trump supporters actually condemn the violent act that was done against George Floyd? Do they really claim that they're not racist? Well, we will investigate in this video. I recently went to a Donald Trump advocate page and basically asked them the question, how come in the protests we don't see any vocal Donald Trump protesters protesting in favor of George Floyd, or at least in favor against police brutality? And the amount of responses I got was astonishing and at the same time very disappointing, and it only enforces the idea that most Donald Trump supporters are actually racist. I mean, I can run through a list of excuses they would say. For example, they would say, we were too busy. Trump supporters actually work, unlike the black people. Trump supporters actually work. They have a job, and that's why they're not protesting. I couldn't believe it when I heard this. And as you can see, they're just full of excuses. Are you saying that you're too busy to protest for the death of a black man? Really? So are you saying you work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day? I mean, surely you could have had a weekend put aside to set up a protest. I'm pretty sure that you weren't busy when it came to protesting for the election of Donald Trump, right? You weren't busy then. I mean, or maybe you didn't have a job then. Is that your next excuse? That you didn't have a job when you were actually protesting for Donald Trump to run for presidency? I mean, really? I've heard other excuses such as, the Black Lives movement has got other political agendas that the Trump supporters disagree with, therefore they can't really come in solidarity to the protests. Again, no one is suggesting that you need to agree with every policy of Black Lives Matter, but that doesn't negate the fact that you should not hold in solidarity against police brutality. So again, that's not an excuse to not be there. When Islamic or Muslim terrorism occurred in the world, I mean, we had all nations come together in France and protest against the killings of non-Muslims. You banded together with all nations, and some nations you even disagree with on certain political agendas, and yet you had no problem coming together in solidarity and protesting against terrorism. So again, why is it now an excuse that apparently you need to agree with everything that the Black Lives Matter stand for in order to actually hold hands in solidarity to protest against police brutality? Now, it's interesting because whenever a terrorist attack happens, and this is another point, they expect all Muslims to actually go out and be vocal and protest against this and to condemn this. And if you don't condemn it, it means you actually support terrorism. So then I would make the same argument to you, Trump supporters, that if you don't condemn police brutality against a black person, then that would mean you also support police brutality against black people. You can't make one standard against a Muslim and a separate standard for yourself. Another Trump supporter says to me, well, when a police brutality occurs and a black police officer kills a white person, they don't see the Black Lives Matter movement protest against black police brutality of white people. First of all, that argument doesn't add up too, because white people are actually protesting, right? They are protesting along with the Black Lives Matter movement. But for some reason, they're not the Trump supporters. So that's not an argument. And the other second point is, you won't always get black protesters protesting constantly or condemning and setting up protests for the killing of white people, because at the end of the day, the black people have been oppressed. They're an oppressed civilization living in the West. They have the whole slave trade industry that was against them. You know, they were raped, they were pillaged, they were killed, they were murdered. And so you can't actually expect a generation of people who have been victimized due to white aggression against them. You can't then suddenly say, well, they need to protest for us too. And shouldn't you be better than that? Because at the end of the day, most people think that Trump supporters are racist. So shouldn't you actually spend a lot more effort to break that sort of stereotyping and so promote the idea that you believe in Black Lives Matter? I mean, if the Black Lives Matter was actually racist to the bone against white people, then yeah, I understand how you would want them to prove that they're not racist by protesting against the death of a white man under black police brutality. However, they're not known for that. No one actually labels them as racist, but a lot of people do label white Trump supporters as being racist to the bone. So it should be a duty upon yourself and your organization and your party to come out and prove to the rest of the people that you aren't a racist organization. And as a Muslim, just imagine I said, well, you know what, I'm not going to protest against terrorism because we don't really see enough white people supporting Muslims. Imagine I said that. That wouldn't be a legitimate argument now, would it? I couldn't believe my ears. Another comment actually said something like, oh, even if there were Trump supporters there, the media would censor it. And I thought to myself, really? So are you saying there's no pro-Trump media networks there, especially Fox News, who has been, even according to peer review research, and I'll put the hyperlink below this here, it is proven to be pro-Trump. So he's saying that there was no Fox News out there that could document these specific Trump supporters condemning police brutality? Interesting. And here's another point. There are thousands and thousands of video images of the protests. Let's put the media to the side. What about everyone having iPhones? There are thousands of people holding up iPhones and recording the protests. Why didn't a single one of those images capture Trump supporters with their T-shirts, with their caps, saying that they condemn police brutality? Are we to believe that out of the thousands of video recordings captured from your personal phones, not a single one of them captured these apparent Trump supporters? Now, another Trump supporter said to me, well, how do you know that some of those white people aren't Trump supporters? Well, again, I don't know. I mean, they could be, but the burden of proof is upon you to prove it. If you claim they are Trump supporters, then you should be able to prove that they are Trump supporters. And by the way, folks, Trump supporters are not shy of actually concealing that they're Trump supporters. Trump supporters would they'll sell their mothers if they could to promote Donald Trump. This will be the biggest opportunity for them to bring their flags, their t-shirts with all these, slogans of Trump saying that they condemn police brutality and they want Donald Trump to do something about it. I mean, they're very vocal about wanting to change so many policies around the world, but why aren't they vocal against their president, demanding their president that they want to see change within the police force? It's interesting, even Donald Trump himself, he wasn't even very vocal condemning the police brutality. All he called it was a tragedy. I mean, really? Tragedy? Tragedy, under the dictionary definition, could be, the meaning is basically, could be a mistake. A mistake. It's a tragedy. Yeah, it's a tragedy, guys. It was just uncalled for. It was just a mistake. Really? Is that the way your president condemns this sort of police brutality? But Mr. Donald Trump was so vocal in his condemnation when it came to the looting. Oh, yes, these criminals, these thugs, looting will lead to shooting. He was very vocal, but very little against police brutality. One Trump supporter even said to me how... if Trump supporters went out there wearing their caps, their t-shirts, in support of George Floyd, then the Black Lives Matter movement would have been angry at these t-shirts and hats and they could have been attacked. Notice how they make an excuse after an excuse after an excuse. Well, okay, fair enough. They will apparently be attacked. Why don't you set up your own independent protests? Away from the mass protests. Set it up somewhere else and record it on YouTube and publish it, and let's see you protesting in a peaceful manner. Show us that. Show us your independent protests. And in fact, if you can't even do that, then why don't you go behind closed doors? Yeah, set up, go to a town hall, 5,000 people, all Trump supporters in the town hall behind closed doors, and do your protest and your condemnation against police brutality against the lives of black people. Do it even against the lives of white people. Do it simultaneously together. But mention George Floyd's name. Let's see whether you actually condemn this. Really, as you say you do. So why don't you do that? If you're so afraid of displaying your Trump slogans in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter protests. Another Donald Trump supporter said to me, well, they're not really going to support George Floyd in a protest, and they're not going to condemn this because George Floyd had a criminal record. He spent 10 months in prison, 8 months in prison in 2002, 2004, 10 months in prison, and the list goes on. But that, again, is not a justification for why you shouldn't protest. You're not protesting specifically for George Floyd. You're protesting against police brutality, regardless if it's done against a black person, a white person, or so forth. You're there to condemn against police brutality. So using George Floyd's criminal record as an excuse for not protesting is not an excuse not to protest. But of course, you're only using that as an excuse so you don't protest against police brutality, against black lives, because you are racist to the bone. And you know it. Well, someone did a funny comment and said, this is where all the Trump supporters are protesting, looting the stores. Oh, that one was funny. We know that you are racist to the bone. Let us not forget that when Donald Trump was running for presidency, his campaign's motto was all about how to make America great again. Was making America great again just about making America great again economically or about people's rights and liberty? Absolutely not. It was about removing a black president, Barack Obama, who they were actually associating with Islam, and re-electing a white president, because only then America can be great again. No, it can't be great again with a black president being re-elected. No, only with a white president. And you know it. You're racist to the bone.